Hi, I'm Caleb Borchers.
Hey, I'm Rhiannon Kincaid.
What's going on? I'm Adam Barnhardt.
And we are the hosts of Marvel News Desk, and you're watching Mr. Media.
I'm guessing that, like me, you probably listen to your favorite podcast whenever and wherever you can squeeze them in. For me, that includes the last 15 minutes of the day, or while I'm walking the dog, or on the treadmill at the gym, or driving somewhere, or even cranked up loud while I'm in the shower. That last place was where I happened to be listening to a recent episode of the Marvel News Desk podcast. Now, generally, I'm not one to discuss such things, except this time. I had a head covered in shampoo when Caleb, Rhiannon, and Adam announced they were about to begin reviewing Season 3 of Daredevil on Netflix, spoilers and all. Mimi! What's wrong? What's wrong? My wife asked, rushing into the bathroom from the living room. I can't turn off my iPhone without getting it wet, and Marvel News Desk is about to reveal Daredevil spoilers. Turn it off! Mimi, Mrs. Media, who has watched every episode of Marvel's Netflix shows with me and has listened to more than a few Marvel News Desk podcasts, understood my anguish. We had not yet started watching DD3. Now, Marvel News Desk, hosted by ringmaster Caleb Borchers, refereed by Rhiannon Kincaid, and anguished over by Adam Barnhardt, is easily the podcast I look forward to more than any other each week. It is frothy good fun, and since splitting off from the MCU Exchange early in 2018, has hit its stride in terms of information, laughs, and insight. If you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe of films and TV shows, there is nothing more entertaining out there than this. Caleb Borchers, Rhiannon Kincaid, and Adam Barnhardt, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thanks, man.
I know.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm feeling like there's no way we're going to live up to this introduction,
Right.
is what I'm thinking.
Exactly. I'm like, you're more kind about our show than my own parents, so thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Now I did have to ask if I made this really awkward by revealing that I sometimes listen to you guys talk about comic book characters while I'm in the shower. Is that a bad thing?
Nah.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, in
I
that
just hope
case,
we don't ruin it for anybody now that they've seen our faces, because I've said many times it's a face for podcasts.
you guys
Exactly.
you got nothing to worry about. Don't sweat it. Just so glad we were able to get you all in one place. And I have to tell you, I'm kind of hoping to treat this this interview, this conversation, as sort of an origin story for the Marvel News Desk. I mean, I want to know, who are you people, and how did you get so good at this so fast? Caleb, you seem like the ringmaster here, or is the ringmaster of crime? Is that the character that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Tell folks a little about yourself and how you got involved in what is now the Marvel News Desk.
Yeah, so we were all writing over at MCU Exchange, which is a website, does news. We were volunteers the whole time we were there. We would just kind of write articles as they came up, and there was no podcast on that website. We felt like there probably should be. It looked like an opportunity for something to happen. It actually started when they announced Inhumans was going to be a TV show. Me and another guy on there were so pumped about it, and Rhiannon said, well, hey, let's do like an impromptu podcast. And we talked for like a half hour, and we enjoyed it. It was fun. And I was like, hey, we should do this again. The other guy wasn't so interested, but Adam was. And so the three of us were just the only people on the website that wanted to do it. And we just kept showing up. I don't know, like we just week in, week out kept coming on. And these two guys are great to work with. I don't know, it's been very easy because we're friends. We've gone through a lot of changes coming off MCU Exchange, starting our own website, doing YouTube stuff, handling the behind the scenes and the technical stuff and even financials and all that stuff. And these guys have always been super, super easy to work with. So I don't know. I think the thing for us is it's still a hobby. Like we just do it because we enjoy it. For me, it's my hour and a half each week that I get to talk about things that my real life friends think I'm nerdy for liking. And so it's just like really cool for me to be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it just kind of came together impromptu like that. I am the guy at the beginning of the show and the guy that organizes the show, mostly because I was willing to do it and partially because I probably have control issues. But other than that, and I think the other guys are just happy that they don't have to mess with it. So
Right. Yes.
That's the whole reason for our success is that Caleb was willing to put forth all the work. I mean, and do all the editing. I mean, I had another podcast when we started doing this. I mean, and I still technically do, but I had to do all the editing and everything for that. So it comes out maybe once every 4, 5, 6 months. And, you know, the whole Caleb from the very beginning was like, we're going to do this. Because I clearly remember in the early days, there was one night, like, I had gone to bed or something, like completely forgotten we had plans. And I started getting these alerts that are like, we're podcasting tonight. We're podcasting tonight. And I'm like, oh, and like crawled out of bed and like got online with everybody. And I mean, Caleb is totally the reason that it ever happened.
And so, Adam, you came in after it started?
I don't recall. I remember I was on one very early episode when we were still the MCU Exchange podcast, and all I remember of that was that it was very, very, very bad. I don't know. My microphone wasn't working, or I had it plugged in. I don't know. I'm not the technological one of us three. But I think we still have that, Caleb, right? We can release that as like a Christmas episode or something.
Yeah, I think we're going to put it on Patreon. The very first episode, we recorded it and we showed it to our editor at MCU Exchange, and he said it was too crappy to put out. So that's never seen the light of day. Adam was around. I was just going to say, Adam's been around since the very beginning of our numbered episodes. We kind of did almost like a pilot with actually a guy named Charles Murphy. It's on Twitter. He was around to do that. So that's what I meant. But yeah, the three of us have been the crew since day one as far as week in, week out episodes.
And Rhiannon, let me ask you, what in your secret identity, who are you and what do you do? And I ask you first because you had, I think, of the three, kind of the most interesting year because you actually had to drop out of sight for a while.
Yeah, so my day job has potential to be political. And I mean, when I started writing for MCU Exchange, I was unemployed. It was really just sort of like a hobby that like I was looking for things to do and I wanted a writing resume. I wanted more experience writing. I was unemployed. And then I took like a part-time gig in disaster recovery. And as you can imagine, over the past year, I did, and that was a little over 2 years ago. It was a temporary position in disaster recovery. And over the past 2 years, there's been a lot of disasters. So that's one thing. So like as my job became a little bit more political in that, I decided to take a pseudonym. So on the website, everywhere in print, I am Brooklyn Wallace, which is a combination. I mean, just Brooklyn, I'm obsessed with the water towers and stuff and had some fun weekends, I don't know. And then Wallace is like a family name. Yeah. So I decided to take the pseudonym, and it really freaked my dad out when I changed like all of my written stuff. Cause like he would occasionally just go and, brag my daughter's a published author, like whatever. And like suddenly I disappeared and like I never told him about it. So it freaked him out. But I mean, and that's just purely because of the day job. So over the past year when we've been podcasting, I mean, like when we started, I was in New Jersey and I've gone back to North Carolina and then I went down to the Virgin Islands for a little while and I literally didn't have internet because it was about a month after Maria. So I don't know how they managed to stay on track through that time, but I'm glad they did.
And are you still doing that kind of work? Or are you doing something else?
I still work in disaster recovery.
Okay.
But I've taken a more permanent long-term position in New York City. So now I live in New York City. I'll probably still travel a little, but it'll be less frequent.
It was always very interesting not knowing week to week, will Rhiannon have internet It's like, it's as much a mystery as what's going to be in, Avengers 3 or Avengers 4 for a while.
Right.
Yeah. It was hard for me too.
So you're in New York, and Adam, you're in Iowa, right?
I am in Iowa. It's surprised we even have internet here.
So are we. Just kidding. What do you? Well, up until recently, what did you do in Iowa? Because we'll talk about what you're doing now. But what did you do when you joined the MCU and the podcast?
I was in marketing for a manufacturer, material handling equipment of sorts, and it was about as exciting as I just made it sound. I guess my career has always kind of been in marketing of sorts. I used to be in arena football, that kind of stuff. So obviously a lot of marketing and social media and digital media work.
Did you work with the Barnstormers?
I did not work with the Barnstormers. I used to be a Barnstormers season ticket holder. The Cedar Rapids Titans, Bemidji Axemen, they're kind of in the same league as the Barnstormers. But yeah, I know several people with that organization, really good people.
Oh, very nice. And Caleb, you are in Massachusetts somewhere?
Close. Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
We're actually our own state. Many people think of us as Massachusetts. But yeah, I live in Rhode Island. I'm a pastor. I work in ministry for a full-time job, and we don't talk about too much on the podcast. I never know. It's not like I'm ashamed of it, but I know that freaks some people out. I know there's some people that kind of clam up and get worried about their language and stuff as soon as they hear that. So I try to be pretty chill about it. But yeah, it's what I do. It's actually been helpful a couple times. I recently did an episode with AP Marvel, kind of our sister podcast on the website, about Catholicism and Daredevil and kind of the spiritual and religious overtones of that show. So, but yeah, that's what I do on my real job.
Well, that answered a question for me, because you always, in the conversations about Daredevil, you've always been able to tie it back to the religion and the storylines that where Matt Murdock's religion has been. He's questioned it. He's questioned God, and we know through the years in Daredevil that's always been a big theme. So that answers a big question for me, because I wondered, boy, how is he so well schooled in all of this stuff? So that explains a lot. And as I recall, you are also...
It's literally being schooled in those things.
Literally. You
right.
You're also, I think, the only married member of the crew and parent. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm married. I have 4 little girls. So yes, I am the only one. And every once in a while, you might hear them screaming in the background. I'm a little nervous tonight. It's Halloween, and they're going to bed late with candy in their system. So, if you hear any weird noises, that's all it is.
Good luck to you. Well, so I want to continue that with 2 things. One is I noticed you guys are very careful about not cursing. I think recently Adam was very upset about some Netflix cancellations.
Yes.
And wanted to start the show by cursing in the way that they do on the Good Place, I think. And so you're kind of, when I said ringmaster, you really do make sure, and you probably do some editing if need be, right?
Yeah. So we never talked about this. It just sort of happened that we didn't. And I don't know. I'm the kind of guy, I like to be able to listen to stuff in the car with my kids around. So like my favorite podcast is the Weekly Planet podcast out of Australia, Mr. Sunday Movies. And I love their show, but I can't listen to it with my kids around because they'll drop F-bombs and stuff. Not in a terrible, like, extreme way, but just the way normal people talk. And so, I don't know, we never did. And then when we did, I didn't want an explicit tag on iTunes just because I thought it would limit our audience. So yeah, I'll edit them out a little bit. We've gotten to where I turn it into a joke. Every once in a while, you'll hear bleeps on the show that aren't actually swear words. It's just me joking around. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The other guys might hate it. I don't know. It's just something that kind of developed, so...
Rhiannon, do you have to watch your language, or do you make a point of it because you know it might be difficult for Caleb, or is it not even an issue?
No, it's usually not an issue. And I think it's pretty good because I mean, like I said, I was unemployed for a little while and I did the Super Ladies podcast. And when my friend and I started that one, we were just like, okay, we're going with that explicit tag. We know we're going to have 10 listeners total. Like, who cares? F it all. And it was just, all the words. So, I mean, the thing is, I can't turn it on or off. So, like, if I do that for an hour a night in a podcast, like, I might do it at work the next day, and that's not good. So, like, I should probably limit, the cursing anyways. So I enjoy it, and I also enjoy it just, like, I like a challenge, so expressing your frustration in something, and even if I'm just saying, bleep the bleeping bleep bleep bleeps, like, that, I enjoy that, so.
And Adam, would you like to curse in the form of The Good Place right now? Do you feel it coming on?
So, I mean, I kind of pat myself on the back a little bit. I didn't say one actual swear word during the Iron Fist cancellation podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I did pretty good. Yeah. I can't say the same.
It was incredible.
It was incredible. I guess that's what our Slack chat's kind of for. I mean, some of my verbiage in there is a hard R. Like a hard R. Yeah, like Rhiannon said, it is a nice challenge. I figured if I can make it through and talk about canceling Iron Fist for 1 hour without dropping a single F-bomb or any swear word, I could probably go pretty far in life.
You went further than I did when I heard the cancellations. I texted my wife on the first, on the Iron Fist, and there might have been an F-bomb in the text, and maybe 2 or 3 when they canceled Luke. But so you guys all started writing for the MCU Exchange. So tell me a little bit. Let's go round robin again. Tell me a little bit about your writing background, or did you have a writing background, or was it just that you were drawn to express yourself about comics and such? Rhiannon, why don't you go first?
I'm an engineer by trade and hated it. And I had gotten on a kick. I was writing screenplays. I really enjoyed it. I got to Austin Film Festival. I enjoyed writing in that regard. And I've written like a ton of fan fiction. So like when I saw the MCU Exchange and that they were looking for writers and that they were willing to let me do it, it was like, oh, I could do this and it's actually somewhat productive. Like, 1, it's something that people are actually going to see. 2, it's that type of information that I've wanted. I mean, like, when I obsess about a show, I obsess about it. I want to see every little Dr. Pepper can silhouette piece of news about it out there. And like I said, I had free time at the time and I wanted to build a writing resume. And so I just did it. And oh my gosh, some of my first articles were horrible. Like, there were some that one of the other writers at the time that's gone on to be a pro writer, like, completely went in and completely edited, like, changed it to his. It needed so much editing. But it was nice to, like, really get in that groove. I enjoyed it, but I had no experience like that beforehand.
Interesting. What about you, Adam?
So I've kind of always had a little background in writing. I'm not sure where it came from. I remember as a kid, maybe middle schoolish, being in fantasy football. And I was the one person in a league. Our neighborhood kids and such had a keeper league, which means you keep players year after year and so forth. And I was the only one in that league to like write press releases and things of that nature. I would release somebody, then I'd write a press release and put it on our message board. And that had to be middle school. And our local paper, the Pocahontas Record Democrat, weekly, probably a circulation of about 1,200 or so.
I have the latest issue right here on my desk, actually.
Look at that. A whopping, I think they charge 10 cents still. They kind of had a habit of hiring high school kids as sports writers and such. So I picked up a gig there and kind of did that throughout high school on and off. And then that kind of segued itself I went to one semester of college for broadcasting, and that kind of segued immediately into communications with the arena football teams.
Oh, all right. And Caleb, what about you?
Yeah, my school, I mean, there's a lot of writing in my schooling. Seminary tends to be very paper heavy, so I did a lot of it in grad school. And then my job, it's a lot of people don't think of it as writing, but it really is. Like I'm writing curriculum for classes or writing a weekly sermon every week. It's obviously writing for the purpose of speaking, but you still have to kind of think and craft your piece the same kind of way. So in that way, I do that all the time. MCU Exchange was it was a hobby. That was the website I went to the most for Marvel News. And they put up one day that they wanted writers. And I asked my wife, I was like, this is going to take some time, but I think I'm going to have fun at it. Do you think I can do it? And she said, yeah, sure. And again, it was just an outlet for me. It helps. I don't do great with hobbies unless I'm producing something. And so I really liked being able to write for that site. I liked writing features a lot more than I like news. And ultimately, I've enjoyed this multimedia podcast, YouTube thing even more than I like writing for written word because, again, I mean, that's just what I do. Like communication and verbally sharing information is what I do all the time. And so that's been my favorite part.
And Adam, of the three of you, you've been the first to actually make this a gig. I mean, you're now getting paid, right, by comicbook.com. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I actually, what was it, 2 years ago now, guys, probably, maybe a year and a half, I actually left MCU Exchange and went and did stuff for comicbook.com part-time on a part-time basis. Right around that time, I had started watching the CW's Arrowverse shows. So I kind of wanted a place where I could write about that in addition to the MCU or Stranger Things or anything I watch on Netflix. And 2 years later, they fortunately enough offered me a full-time gig, which I accepted. No questions. A little bit of questions. I asked these two what their thoughts were, but yeah, they're letting me continue on with the podcast and stuff. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. My dad's actually a bigger nerd than I am. He's collected comics most of his life. And he essentially said if I didn't take it, he'd disown me. So I said, all right, I'll make you happy. He didn't say that, but he said, Adam, yeah, you should probably take that job. It's amazing.
Good deal. So Caleb, will you have Adam introduce himself as Adam Barnhardt of comicbook.com going forward, or will you have him not say a word about it just to frustrate the people at comicbook.com?
Oh, we brought it up on the show. It's really weird. Like, I don't feel like we talk about ourselves too much on the show. Like, I mean, things pop out here and there, but yeah, Adam can introduce himself any way he wants to. Last week, he wanted to be the sworn protector of antacids or something like that. So, whatever he asks for, man. It's a volunteer gig, so whatever he wants, he can have.
Believe it or not, I don't carry that much clout.
Okay.
Maybe in like the Iron Fist fandom, a little. Probably not though. What little's left of us, all three of us.
Well, it's funny. I have to be honest here. And Adam, for me, you were the hardest one for me to kind of wrap my brain around. I didn't quite get you for quite a while, and then suddenly it just clicked. I can't explain when or why it happened. And then lately, it just seemed like, and maybe it has something to do with the new gig, or maybe it happened before that, but you just seem to be having a much better time, even when you're just aggravated beyond all reason about something. And I know everybody teases you about Iron Fist and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Believe it or not, most people tell me that. They said, you know what, Adam, it takes me a lot of people don't even go the lengths you said, and they don't even say, oh, eventually it clicks. They just said, Adam, I can't wrap my mind around you sometimes. But yeah, I'll agree. The earliest episodes of MND were rough on my part. I'm not sure what it was exactly. I'm not sure if I'm just too much of an introvert or what. But now, I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to get on our hangout or whatever each week and get to talking. Like Caleb said earlier, I consider these two, friends. And I was bummed as heck I couldn't make it to New York. Family members getting married and such. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's fun, and we have some solid laughs.
Well, I appreciate. Well, go ahead, Caleb.
I was just gonna say, I think that's like, if people wonder, like, how do you do a podcast? I mean, we're the wrong people to ask. And I think, I mean, we do a pretty good job. But like, one of the things for us is just do it every week, because like we do it. We have been disciplined that we are there and we show up week in, week out. And there's a lot of chemistry stuff and comfortability stuff that doesn't happen without practice. And so, like, you talked about, Adam coming into his own. I think part of that is like all three of us are just more comfortable with each other, and we kind of even know where each other is going to come in and come out, and even kind of like volleyball, like, kind of how to give a setup shot so the other guy can spike it. And that stuff only happens when you've recorded 98 episodes together or whatever. And we're not quite there yet, but pretty close. So.
I was thinking that, Adam, you described yourself as an introvert. Rhiannon, I think of you as rather an extrovert based on the way you've described your things that happen at the conventions, and you seem willing to step up and speak up. And then Caleb, you are kind of the moderator, and you're kind of the middle guy in all this stuff. But Rhiannon, what I was really curious about is it's still unusual to find women having as much interest as you do in comics and the depth of detail. And I get the sense that you actually have gone backwards a bit in terms of, and I don't mean backwards, but you've gone back in terms of learning more about some of the older storylines and the characters. That this wasn't. I get the sense that you didn't grow up with all this stuff. This is something you've developed an interest in later on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally in it because of Daredevil. When Daredevil season 1 came out, something clicked. I mean, one of my best friends, like, we were both, like, I have one close friend that we had met through fandom, like through Twitter, and our show that we had loved had just been canceled, and Daredevil was going to come out, and she was like, I'm interested in this show. And somehow she and I discovered comics and like started reading through them at the same time for that. And like I said, when I like to obsess over something, I like to obsess over it. And when I realized there was an outlet for obsessing over this and like all that, and I just sort of embraced it. But it was so funny because like last year when I was planning to go to San Diego Comic-Con, I was talking to my dad, and my dad just like stopped and was like, where did this come from? Because it wasn't, I mean, like, as a kid, I never read a comic book. I rode horses for 20 years. I mean, I've done all kinds of other things. But as a kid, I watched every single episode of the Adam West Batman. Some of them twice. Like, every day I would come home and watch that. I would watch Zorro. I would watch, I mean, I had a thing for, like, masked heroes. So, like, in hindsight, it's not so incredibly random, but I never read a comic until I got my Marvel Unlimited subscription in, like, 2015.
Wow.
And read, like, 200 in one weekend. Like, I
oh, my God.
I disappeared. It's one of my best friends, like, in real life. I mean, I have Shelby on Twitter. I mean, anybody that follows me on Twitter, they've seen me interacting with Shelby, but like, I have one friend in real life that, like, 2 weeks later, she's like, what happened? And I was like, I discovered comic books.
That's so funny.
And it just went on from there.
You've only been reading comics for 3 or 4 years. I mean, yeah. No one would know that, really, to listen to you talk about the characters and the development. And that's really remarkable. I mean, I give you a lot of credit for that, because there are other shows that I have tried to listen to over time, and there are men and women who I can't stand to listen to because they just, I don't know, they're either ill-informed or they don't go to the bother. But you do a really good job, and for someone who's only been reading these things for a short time, pretty remarkable.
Thanks. Caleb edits
one of my philosophies. I was just about to say, one of my philosophies in editing is I always want people to look good. And so, like, every once in a while I'll say, hey, Rhiannon, what do you think about this? And she'll just look blankly at the camera and be like, I've never heard of that. And I always cut that out because I don't, like, that's cool, that's fine. And I think it's valuable that we have a balance of kind of newer people to comics, and like Adam's been reading a long time, kind of grew up with it with his dad, whereas Rhiannon is kind of new to it. I think that's a beautiful thing that we have on the pod, but I do very specifically edit because I never want it to look like we're kind of hanging Rhiannon out to dry, or if it's a topic that Adam just isn't into. Like I don't want to ever make one of us look bad, so I try to always edit it out. Because nobody wants to hear people hem and haw on a podcast,
I clearly remember, like, when Black Panther news started to come out, it would be like, Shuri is casted. Rhiannon, how do you feel about Shuri? And I'm like, I got nothing.
I'll tell people we're recording this on Halloween night. I actually saw someone in CVS today dressed as Shuri. And before,
nice.
I have to be honest, before the movie, I haven't read a Black Panther comic in years. I go back to when Jungle Action was new and on the newsstands. That's how old and antiquated I am. But I didn't really know from Shuri. And then now it's like, wow, of course. How would I not know that? So we have just a little bit more time because I know you guys have to go and record your own show. So I want to hit on a couple of things. But before I move on, one of the things that strikes me, and hearing you guys talk and then talk about yourselves, is family seems to be a very important reason why the show works with the three of you. But also, Adam, you talked about your dad was a nerd himself, and he's the one who wanted you to take the comicbook.com job. Rhiannon, earlier you were talking about how your dad is so proud of you when he sees, when he would see your name on stories. And Caleb, as a dad yourself, with the four daughters. It's amazing he can keep his eyes open. One of the things I wondered about is, I think that you bring a slightly different perspective to the show in that you have this experience of having daughters and very young kids at that. Do you look at the actual Marvel universe, do you think, differently than maybe Adam and Rhiannon, and that actually kind of broadens the show's view in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that makes us work well is that we do have a variety of life experiences. I mean, you mentioned Rhiannon just being a woman on a podcast like this. I've looked at our YouTube statistics, and not many women look at our videos. Like, it is still very male dominated. So I love having Rhiannon's perspective, and we've tried to invite some other women on the show at least once or twice to kind of get that. So I think that's good. I mean, yeah, I look through a lot of things from the perspective of how can I share this with my kids. We did an episode on animation and the new the new Marvel Rising kids show, because I care about it because I want them to like the things I do. And so I think that might be, that's an aspect that I bring, is that I'm always filtering this through, like, when can I share this with my kids? Will they be excited about it? Will they think it's cool? But ultimately, I mean, I think we try to remember that comic books are supposed to be fun. Like, we'll have these conversations internally where people get so angry and they have fights and they try to, like, get really mad and start petitions and get, like, we're like, it's supposed to be fun. Comic books are supposed to be something that you enjoy with a kid-like passion. And I think it's something, we never talked about it, but I think it's something we try to do. We try to remain pretty positive. And we try to enjoy it because it's something we like and it's something that's fun, instead of something to argue about. Like, we'll have our complaints, but we try not to be like Hot Take Factory as much as like fans just enjoying what's going on,
All right. Well, to kind of wrap up, because we're going to run out of time here, I've got a million other things I'd love to ask, just because I'm such a fan of the show and have listened almost back to the beginning. But I'm thinking that since we're coming to the end of 2018, I wondered what surprises each of you would like to see announced for the Marvel Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2019. And maybe we can just go around one more time. Caleb, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, what I would most like to see, which I don't think would happen, is that they're decanonizing Inhumans and they'll give us a great Inhumans movie. That would make me super excited. But no, I mean, realistically for 2019, I'm just really excited about Doctor Strange keeping going. It's one that's really confused me because we've heard rumors it would shoot in April, and then Benedict Wong suggested it's going to shoot this year. But then we're also hearing reports that it's not going to hit theaters in 2019. And so I guess that's the thing I'd most want to see. That's a franchise I really love. Scott Derrickson, because of a variety of things we talked about, including my job. Derrickson is my favorite MCU director because of the way he looks at things, particularly through a faith perspective. And so seeing him come back for Doctor Strange 2 and having firm plans on it, I think would be really exciting for me.
Any other characters you'd like to see announced next year? We know that, with the Fox Disney Marvel thing. Any characters you particularly want to see announced moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, X-Men was my first love. I mean, that's how I first started watching or getting involved in Marvel at all. Was I've talked about before. I went to Pizza Hut and they gave me a VHS copy of X-Men the animated series, the first 2 episodes. And so I would love to see the blueprint for that. Personally, I want to see them build it like the comics. Like I would love a movie with the original 5 as the team, and then you kind of add the giant-sized X-Men, and then maybe add the 80s X-Men. That's how I would do it. But yeah, I would like to see them kind of make concrete how they're going to build it, because I think Kevin Feige is going to do a very good job with it. So if they can make a Cyclops that I actually like, that will be an incredible success for Feige and company.
If they can make a Cyclops that anyone likes, that'll be a success.
Right, exactly.
So in Champions, the Champions comic, I kind of like Cyclops in there, so that's been good.
All right, Rhiannon, why don't you pick up next?
So, like, all I really want is a guarantee that Daredevil will be around for many more seasons. That's like right now, like the pure anxiety. I mean, just like pure anxiety. I want that to just be a sure thing. But beyond that, I mean, like, I think like everybody, I'm looking forward to this big announcement of how the new properties, like, I want a big announcement. I want to know what these new properties are going to be, how they're going to be mixed in. I want another blueprint of the movies coming out for the next 4 years, that sort of situation, which I don't think we're going to get, but I'm excited to see. I think a year from now, we will know how they're going to start incorporating these Fox properties, and it's going to be exciting. So that's what I'm most looking forward to in the next year, aside from much more Daredevil.
Okay. All right. And Adam, your turn. What do you think? What do you want to say?
I think the most exciting thing on the horizon is probably Disney streaming, Mouseflix, as Caleb would call it, or Disney Play, or whatever name it's going to have. Because we kind of sort of are getting the TV part of the MCU that's actually connected to the MCU. It used to be it's all connected. But now, THR and Deadline's reporting that Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios is producing, a Loki show, a Scarlet Witch show, a Falcon and Winter Soldier show. So I think that's super, super interesting and exciting. And it seems like there's all sorts of these comics journalists, quote unquote, on Twitter saying that there's much more in the works for Disney streaming. So I think that's the big thing on my radar at the moment. I mean, obviously, I want another huge film dump where, Kevin's on stage and he announces the next dozen movies or something. But like Rhiannon said, I don't think that's going to happen. And I know Bob Iger's said himself that streaming is going to be a huge part or a huge focus for Disney. So that's enough to excite me going into next year.
All right. Well, first of all, really enjoyed talking to you guys. Folks, you can hear the Marvel News Desk podcast, or you can see it. Well, you can. It appears on YouTube, but not in video yet. I'm hoping maybe after this, these guys will think about doing that. But you can hear the Marvel News Desk podcast and its spinoff, AP Marvel, everywhere from iTunes to YouTube. What website do you want folks to go and check you out on, Caleb?
I guess marvelnewsdesk.com is probably best. That's where all our stuff is. Also, you mentioned video. That's our big Patreon carrot. we do live stream our show on YouTube to our Patreon subscribers at a certain level. So, but yeah, MarvelNewsDesk.com would be probably the best place.
And the show in terms of Twitter and Facebook?
Yeah, it's twitter.com/MarvelNewsDesk, facebook.com/MarvelNewsDesk. I think that's it. Adam's our social media guy, or he was until he gave up.
No, that's it. That is right.
And because
watch.marvelnewsdesk.com will forward you to our YouTube channel.
Okay. And then last thing there, because you do this on your own show, I want you to each go around and give your Twitter handle so people can follow you individually.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go backwards
right.
this time. Well, actually, Adam, you go first. You've gone last in pretty much everything.
I'm begrudgingly on Twitter at Adam Barnhardt.
All right. Rhiannon?
I'm on Twitter as Brooklyn Wallace, and currently my handle is at Shot of Patron, but if you're watching this much later, it might be at, Brooklyn MND is what I'm thinking of changing it to. So if you don't find me as Shot of Patron, I might be there.
The most indecisive Twitter account in the universe.
Yes.
As we all will
It's almost
attest.
been something else a million times.
Yeah. And Caleb, what is your Twitter handle?
I'm at Caleb A. Borchers, Borchers for Borchers, but Caleb A. Borchers. I think I've been forgetting the middle initial when I say it on the show, so some guy named Caleb Borchers will be getting lots of followers, maybe. Who knows?
Could be interesting. All right. Caleb A. Borchers, Rhiannon Kincaid, and Adam Barnhardt. I enjoy your show. You bring me great pleasure every week. Please keep doing it as long as possible, and thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Media, today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, man. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Great time. Thanks.
Turn your back on the deceiver. It's a bad idea to believe her. A bad idea to believe her. Turn up the stereo receiver. Turn up the stereo receiver.